Quick disclaimer. Opinions of host and guest do not represent the views or opinions of Functional Movement Systems. Always consult your physician before beginning any exercise program. This general information is not intended to replace your healthcare professional. Welcome to the Movement Podcast. This show is all about movement. We tackle it from different angles, bring on guests, answer questions, go on a few tangents, and give practical advice, giving you guys a better idea of how you can optimize the human body to be the best it can be. Let's preview what's coming up in this episode. Pass out, nodding off, shut-eye, catching some Z's, hitting the hay. However you say it, sleep is a vital part of our overall health. It affects our mood, immune system, memory, and even diet. Today, we discuss sleep and its connection to movement. The guys break down what happens when we get quality sleep and what happens when we don't. We cover stimulants, stress recovery, what role pain plays in our sleep patterns, and ideas on how to get a better night's rest. So rise and shine for today's episode of the Movement Podcast, powered by FMS. Welcome to the Movement Podcast. Today in the room, we've got Dr. Lee Burton, as always, and Gray Cook, myself, Ashley. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's important to all of us, whether people know it or not. But we're talking about sleep. All right, and I'm just going to give you a couple stats, and we can kind of go from there. So almost 32% of 18 and older adults get insufficient sleep. That's 32%. All right. Almost 73% of students, grade 9 to 12, also get insufficient sleep. So that's 73%. Sleep complaints are present in between 67 and 88% of chronic pain disorders. So going from there, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I'll kind of kick it off here. And, when you talk about those stats, one, it just seems to me, I do the social media drive-by about once a day just to see what are some of the people that we kind of interact with and what are some of the people actually saying and things like that. And sleep seems to be fairly popular topic right now as people are just starting to talk about it a little bit more. And those stats are, you could argue that, okay, basically 1/3 of the people, adults, don't get good sleep, but then over 70% of the people or 70% of the people do get good sleep. So is that compelling? And I think as we go into the conversation, Gray, sleep is really, really important. And my thing is, I tell you what, I've never had a problem sleeping. I mean, I can sleep anywhere.
I've watched you on a plane, and it makes me mad. On a plane,
I'm sleeping before it takes off. I've never had a problem with sleep. I think the kids' statistics are pretty alarming to know, but I don't think any adult who's got kids, that's shocking. That's not shocking to them to say, yeah, I realize my kids going to bed, especially during the summer and especially over the last year where these guys are, locked up in their rooms. They're staying awake all hours of the night, getting up and doing certain things.
Well, as a note, and all three of us being raised outside of the internet, what time did you traditionally go to bed as a child?
I had, basically when I was growing up, I was usually told to go to bed around 9, 9:30. Older I got, it got to be 10. And I'd say once I became senior in high school, really didn't have, but I was already behaviorally, that's just what I did. I was asleep by 10 or 10:30 unless I was out doing the partying thing,
right,
drinking and whatnot.
And see, Lee's pretty self-aware about his sleep. He knows he doesn't have a sleep problem. I watch him go to sleep with like that. It takes me a long time to amp down. And so if I've got a choice to relax an hour or pick up an extra hour sleep, I take an hour of relaxation. But the one thing I will question about the studies we're doing is anytime a study is based on a survey or a self-report, you have the person's opinion. Lee's opinion of sleep is pretty spot on because when he got an Oura ring, it said the exact same thing he felt. I grew up with seasonal allergies. I sneezed. I had all these kind of congestive problems. I've been a snorer since I was born. I've never enjoyed good sleep, and I think I barely eked by on just enough some days and not enough other days, and I would supplement with stimulants. I started very early, like when I was 14, because caffeine's a decongestant too. So I've never enjoyed good sleep. You add on a bunch of broken bones, some arthritis and stuff like that. Now I got a little bit of pain going on. And when I got my Oura Ring, I was like, oh my gosh, of all of the weak links I got, this is the one I need to take most serious.
Yeah, but you still knew it before you got the Oura Ring. You knew you didn't
I
sleep
knew it,
well.
but
Believe
I
me, I've
didn't-
stayed in enough hotel rooms with you over the last 20 years.
Right.
I know you don't sleep very well.
But I was only doing a quantitative analysis of my sleep. I was going to bed at 2 a.m. I was up at 6. And after a cup of coffee, I felt like my battery was charged. It wasn't. I was going on adrenal fatigue. My point is that if I had taken people's word for functional movement back in the late 90s, I wouldn't have felt the need for a movement screen. So I think that we catch people who are already self-aware that they could do better, but I think we're missing the people that are missing the minimum effective dose of sleep. And I was one of them, because even though I knew I had poor sleep, I never thought, should I move that to the list of my priority if I'm feeling fatigue? I just assumed I wasn't fit enough.
Well, but you don't necessarily want to throw out the statistics or the data because it's a survey, right? I mean, that's
Don't throw it out because it's a survey, but you're only getting people who are probably self-aware. You're missing the people that aren't aware, and that's why having a survey and a screen are a double.
Yeah, but okay, if they ask the question, how many nights a week are you getting, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 9 to 10, most people are going to be able to answer that question.
Right, but then
Now,
if
what they're
some
not
of those
gonna be-
people wore a ring,
Well, hold on, but not what I
Or
think
a
what we
Whoop
got to get
band or
into
something.
is it's not always about the number of hours you're sleeping.
just quality.
Right. So if we take that 70% of the people who said they're sleeping, 8 hours a night, which we all know that you're supposed to get 8 hours a night. Well, some people 8 hours a night. When I look at my Oura Ring, some nights I'll get 7 hours of sleep, and the quality's great. I've got a great night's sleep, but only got 7. Some nights I'll get 10 because I drank too much and then slept, passed out, whatever you want to say, slept 10, and the quality was terrible.
And I think Robb Wolf articulated that really good in his book when he said being passed out and sleeping are two different things. Completely. One is a rejuvenative recharge of the battery, and another one is you just ain't walking around
You're not turning your brain
You're
off.
unconscious.
Exactly.
And there's a big difference.
Right. Now, I've seen Lee sleep, and I've seen Lee unconscious. And he's way better on the days he sleeps than when he was unconscious for 8 hours. And but what I'm saying is I hear that stat, and I know it's worse than the stat conveys, both on the worker end, which is at 30%, and the student end, which is 70%.
But what are those stats designed to do? Those stats are designed to do something you touched on, and that's to create more awareness. I mean,
Exactly.
we're talking about it. More people are talking
Okay.
about it because right now sleep is just as important as maybe your 20 minutes of physical activity.
I totally get that. I never took it personally until I realized that the general stat is only a guide for me. And out of all the things I could be working on, if I'm thinking diet, breathing, lifestyle, hydration, sleep is my poorest
But
one.
what does research do? What does reading these surveys, reading this type of data do? All it does is require more research. Because all that says is, why are 70% of the kids not getting a good night's sleep? We have to dive into the details, dive into figuring out, what's going on? And then dive into the details of, these 30%, and is it really 70% saying they're getting a good night's sleep?
Quick sidebar. Back in our physical therapy days, we're working in orthopedics and sports medicine, and I would see just as many female athletes as male athletes. Some of them were yours from GW, some of them were from the others. I was blown away, way more by females than males, who took Tylenol PM like you would take vitamin C. Since they were about 12, experiencing that first growth spurt, going through growing pains, little, hypermobility and stuff like that, and then sports injuries on top of that, I was recognizing probably greater than 50% of my histories on female teenage athletes were also just saying, when I say you're on medication, I take Tylenol PM. And they were almost taking it like a multivitamin, not as an analgesic with antihistamine in it. Mm-hmm. And it's not even anti-inflammatory. So, and I was blown away. And for the first time, I started as a PT really valuing the amount of sleep that the people I was rehabbing were getting, and still hammering caffeine at 5 so I would have enough energy to play with my kids on sleep debt. So I was professionally really realizing that sleep was a pivot point for my patients. And if my patients weren't sleeping, my physical therapy efforts were to get them a good night's sleep. And then I'd work on their balance and function and stuff like that.
You know, one of the things Ashley just mentioned also is how sleep is related. And that's important for people to understand, related to a lot of these chronic problems we have, whether it's diabetes, cardiovascular problems, pain,
yes,
performance, reaction time, cognitive.
Well, I think if we just had to break down sleep, there's a very simplistic way to look at it. There's light sleep, which is basically you're on deck. You're getting ready to do something. That's either reorganize your brain or repair your body, right? So deep sleep, I think you're going to probably get into your tissue repair. And REM, you're going to run a lot of these neural circuits and probably flush a lot of that bad memory out, hold on to the things that are meaningful and good, resolve some inner voices, conflict, whatever. But basically, light sleep is something you got to go through to get to either deep sleep or REM sleep, and both have restorative effects. One probably has more brain benefits and one has more body benefits. And unless you get the full cycle, you're not going to get the best of both. Waking with a fresh brain and a tired body ain't going to do you any good, and the other way around ain't going to do you much good either. So we could overanalyze sleep, but I honestly think that when I started looking at the quality of my sleep and then dealing with some of my musculoskeletal stuff, I was realizing I'm getting plenty of REM. I'm not getting the deep sleep.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make, is it's the chicken or the egg.
Yep.
Chronic problems basically don't allow you to sleep well. Well, not good sleep potentially will lead to chronic problems, because some of the hormonal impacts you get with sleep, if you're not getting good sleep, one of the things, it increases your hunger. It increases your need for, so that leads to diabetes, potentially, type 2 diabetes. Mm-hmm. So you have these ailments that don't let you sleep. So I think we start talking about these things and the importance of sleep. And I think you're right. Let's not overanalyze it. Just understand that if you're not getting good sleep, there are a lot of other reasons or a lot of other things that are related to that.
Yep.
And how you get a good night's sleep is extremely important. But the other thing you talk about, when we talk about quality of sleep, as long as you're getting the certain cycles in your sleep, you meet those minimum cycles, whether that's 6 hours or 8 hours or 9 hours. And most of the data will say 7 to 8 hours in the adult population is where you will typically get those number of cycles. Now, all the other things that you can talk about, Gray, on, well, what's going to make you not get those cycles even though you get 9 hours of sleep?
Exactly. All right, well, let me do a few, because a great way, and I've done this with a lot of patients, and it works way more often than it doesn't. Hard chargers, athletes, people who are going to suck it up and go. I'm like, all right, let's name the things that can kill you first if you don't do them. I'm probably going to pick breathing. If you decide to stop breathing, that's going to kill you quickest. If you decide to stop drinking, that can kill you probably in about 3 days, maybe 4 or 5, depending on how hydrated you are going in. Not sleeping, if it doesn't kill you in 7 to 10 days, it'll make you batshit crazy. Somebody else is going to kill you, okay? You can go a lot longer without eating or exercising than you can those 3 things. So if you've got a sleep problem, the very first thing I'm going to check is, do you have a nutrient deficiency, a hydration deficiency, or a breathing deficiency? And when we look at sleep apnea and the association with obesity and sleep apnea, I've had 3 broken noses. I got sleep apnea because of a deviated septum. And it's way better than it was because I've done some stuff from my airway. But if we've got bad breathing, you can't have good sleeping. So now all of a sudden we're back at breathing, right? So if I just go through the cycles of your life that can kill you first, if we don't fix those, your movement, your fitness, your goal that has a physical manifestation ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. And the way I try to describe it, if that doesn't do it, is I said, listen, there's 2 things that are going to kill your battery. Not properly charging it and running too many effing apps in the background when you're only supposed to be doing one thing, which is GPSing or texting or emailing. But if you've got 36 other apps running in the background, you're going to lose your battery. So most people only want to work on one end. Some people are really good at deleting apps, but they improperly charge their battery. Some people properly charge their battery and then run a bunch of bullshit apps in the background of their life and never get anything done, but they're busy all the time. And I've got a confront myself with that. Am I not charging the battery properly, or am I wasting energy unnecessarily with scattered focus instead of in deep focus?
Well, you bring up a good point. As I think when we start, we're sitting here on this podcast talking about how important exercise is, how important sleep, breathing, nutrition, all the things that we know are going to make you live a healthier life. I think the point you're getting to is, where do you start?
Well,
and you have to start with one of the most fundamental things, whether that's sleep, hydration, nutrition, or in this example, sleep being one of those things. That is primary or more fundamental than saying go out and exercise. Because if you're not sleeping right, you're not breathing right, you're not hydrating right, exercise is not going to be beneficial to you.
And the kind of exercise that's going to change you is loading a new app. And it takes a lot of space and energy.
When you say load a new app, what do you mean?
Well, on your phone. Every time you load a frickin' app on your phone, you're potentially stealing memory space and one other thing that's going to cannibalize the energy of the battery. So if you're just exercising to maintain, then maintenance is not new. You don't have to rewire the circuit board to walk. But if you're going to try to pick up kettlebell swings and you've got no background in weight training, then you're actually going to load an app probably on very low battery power
and incorrectly,
with very poor processing. And what I mean by that is mobility, stability, and sensory awareness problems. So my biggest, the people who are getting ready to adopt the wrong exercise right now are also the people with half-ass batteries and too many other apps open anyway. And it's unfortunate because I honestly think that if your sleep is broken and you're not moving enough, try to adequately sleep at the stress level you're at now. And if you can't figure that out, you need some help. But if you can start sleeping better at the exact same amount of stress level, then start adding stress. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to interrupt your sleep. A little bit, but not horribly. So when you add exercise the first day, you may have worse sleep.
Yeah, but how do people know what their stress level is? How do people understand that? So when you say at exactly the same stress level, what does that mean?
Okay,
my stress is going up and down every day, all day.
Okay, well, what I'm really talking about in biology is your stress recovery cycle. Every animal has to eat, sleep, and move, okay? And so if we take it back to that basic, Lee, do you think you're overstressed or under-recovered? Because if you're not an optimal version of yourself, and I don't care what you say, I'm going to test them both, but are you under-recovered or overstressed? Because most of the people that tell me they're overstressed don't look physically overstressed.
Right, and I
they
think
look very physically comfortable.
But I think part of the problem that we talking about the general person out there, or let's just say, okay, the person going to work out, have a hard workout today. How do they know that? How can they become more aware of where their tank is? Am I under-recovered or am I just overstressed? Well, and a lot of people don't know what that is.
And so always assume the most conservative, safest play. Assume you're under-recovered. And if you can't recover from this, you don't know how to recover, okay? If you sit most of the day and exercise very little and you still have broken sleep, then why would you add stress to your life when you can't even recover from this bullshit existence of low activity? So my whole point is, if you can't fix your sleep just by doing the top 10 things on the internet to fix your sleep, which are all reduce your tech, reduce your social interaction, do something to amp you down, don't drink a lot, don't eat a lot, avoid the acid reflux just by not eating, So do the top 10 things.
And those things are before you go to sleep. Those are like the things you want to do
They call it sleep hygiene, and it makes a lot of sense, right?
It's not like I've got to start at 12 o'clock in the afternoon if I'm going to try to sleep at 10
you
o'clock.
Quit drinking caffeine about then, because that's one of the things. Yeah.
But that's right. I mean, I think those are the simple recommendations that you need to try and prepare yourself to sleep.
That's the question I ask. Lee, if you don't know how to answer that question, the first thing I will do is figure out a way to watch your sleep and see if you can prove it without adding any extra stress. And if you can, then you've actually buffered the stress load that you're getting ready to do, meaning when I do tell you to start confronting your movement problem, or we're going to start some serious rehab now that you're out of your cast, you will be ready to recover from the stress that I'm going to drop on you. If I overstress you, we'll see a dip in your recovery. If I understress you, we won't see your movement change. So my whole point is, if sleep is more important than movement, because it can kill you quicker if you don't do it, right? Then fix your sleep at the current stress level you're at. And if you can't, you got a healthcare problem. And if you can, now you're ready for me to throw some stress at you, and that's on me to dose it so you rebound correctly. And all of a sudden, it's a self-facilitating cycle. You start getting up a little bit earlier, you start exercising a little bit more, you're gonna go to sleep way better at 10:30 than you were before, because you still got this physical energy that thousands and thousands and thousands of generations of DNA said, you didn't move enough today. And so you're restless at 11 o'clock in bed. So take a walk after dinner, get up early and just move around a little bit more, but that's the load, that's it. But if you're not even already sleeping good, exercise ain't gonna make you feel better today.
Well, I think that's the point. And all the things that we know the research and the data has said that inadequate sleep will lead to, or I should, again, shouldn't say lead to, are related to certain problems. Because when we say a lack of sleep leads to these chronic, or has related to these chronic conditions, people assume that, okay, if I just create better sleep, all these other things are going to be fine. That's not what it means.
Yep.
It means that there's a relationship, because again, if you've got one thing, you probably got 2, 3, 4 things going on, and all we're trying to say is go to the least or the most fundamental primary thing, knock over that domino, and see how many more dominoes get knocked over, because the people who are exercising are, you know, you could relate those people to a little bit more higher socioeconomic status.
Well, and let me do this for every professional out there. And seriously, before you start dispensing advice, make 2 columns. One's called recovery and one's called stress. So your stress recovery cycle. Now, you've got constructive and not so constructive in each column. I got a lot of stressors in my life that probably don't make me a better person. It's just the product of my life. And I got a lot of stressors in my life, like exercise or correctives or something, that are constructive. I got a lot of distractions I use to recalibrate that probably aren't as healthy as others are. And so you just got to make yourself a laundry list of your stress and recovery behaviors. How many of these are fundamentally upheld as nutrients on both ends, and how many are probably substitutes or distractions? If you're taking a lot of stimulants, you're probably not sleeping good. Those 2 behaviors are bookending each other. So I just make that laundry list, and for most of us, there is enough room to clean up your recovery before you ask for more stress that makes it all worth it. If you're, my wife doesn't have as big a problem hydrating as I do, and she sleeps better than I do. So I'm constantly on her about, you need to drink more, and she's constantly on me like, why were you up till midnight last night? I'm like, because nobody would help me turn off my brain. So.
Ready to join the thousands of pros who have been certified in the FMS or SFMA? Then this is your chance to do so and take advantage of additional savings just for our podcast listeners. Whether in healthcare or fitness and performance, helping people get out of pain and moving well so they can do what they love is what Functional Movement Systems does best. As a professional, finding the biggest opportunity for success with your clients or patients has never been easier. Start your journey from the comfort of your own home with one of our virtual certification courses and quickly learn how to use these industry-standard tools to properly screen and assess movement. These courses feature live interaction with our expert instructors to answer those tough questions and real-world cases so you can learn how to find that biggest opportunity for success. For a limited time, save $50 off any FMS Level 1 or SFMA Level 1 virtual course when you use code VIRT50 at checkout. That's VIRT50 to get $50 off. Go to functionalmovement.com and get started today.
How are what would be some of those pieces of advice for recovery? I mean, because again, I think most people would wake up in the morning and realize, I just don't feel quite the way I should today compared to 2 days ago. And maybe it is just as simple as keeping a log to at least start, because not everybody's got an Oura ring, everybody's got a Whoop, not everybody's got the technology, and sometimes technology, all this data can inundate you, then it's just white noise. So,
and long before the Oura ring, if you'll roll over in the morning and take your resting heart rate and just journal that every day for a month, the lowest reading you get is probably the best night's sleep that you got and the most recovered you are. And that's where the Oura ring started. And then it started, and the Whoop band started comparing themselves to EKG and getting heart rate variability. But getting back to the resting heart rate that is most representative of your most balanced, recovered state is as simple as that. And I think we've had that under our noses forever. Roll over and take your resting heart rate.
I don't know. I think my alarm raises my heart rate. So I don't know if I could do that.
On a day when your alarm doesn't go off, check your resting heart rate, and then let that be your baseline and check it against the alarm. Now, here's the funny thing. On the nights when I first had a report where I was more well rested, I actually woke up tired. I was so well rested that it took me a few minutes. But then all of a sudden, I said, I wonder, am I really tired, or am I just on a taper from coming off that last bout of deep sleep? And sure enough, you follow some of the Wim Hof advice and let that last 2 minutes of shower be cold, and you're like, oh, there it is. I'm right back. And so we can use environmental stimulant. I didn't need to be on a Peloton bike for 45 minutes to feel the benefit of that good night's sleep. I just needed something to contrast it, to shift gears and let my metabolism know it's uptime. It's no longer warm, fuzzy downtime. And so many of our ancestors didn't even have a choice. The only shower you could take was cold. The only bath you could take was cold. So these environmental triggers were right there to shock us into sleep and lull us, put us into life and put us into sleep.
But I think it's a slippery slope to overcomplicate it. And I think we have to keep saying, don't overcomplicate it. Again, the people you work with, if you're a professional, you work with patients or clients, just stress to them how important it is. And just let that be the first step. Don't go out and say, you need to be monitoring your sleep and are you getting quality and this and that. No, just say, hey, you need to be getting about 8 hours of sleep a night. Take a look. Do you feel like you're getting it? Because everybody's going to have stuff going on throughout the day, at night. They can't get home at a certain time. So there's going to be, but overall, I think you said a month, just monitor it over a certain amount of time and just see consistently.
Yep.
Because it's not going to be every night.
Right.
It's impossible.
Listen, you don't want anybody else to judge you by your behaviors over the course of 48 hours. Why would you make a decision for the rest of your life over those same 48 hours? Let yourself have a month to truly see how you behave. Face that like a frickin' adult. Fix the broken shit. Uphold the good shit. Make new habits out of the bad old ones. And one thing, when you and I first started working in professional athletics, I don't know if you were as much as I was, but I was absolutely blown away by almost everybody like John Tureen who was in the human performance realm. All right, John wasn't even in the rehab side of it, but more than anybody else, John Tureen at the Colts was looking at circadian rhythms, hydration in a completely different way than just saying, I like this product over that one. Mm-hmm. All right. And John was making proactive decisions on these guys' recovery at an equal amount of focus enthusiasm as he was dispensing the stress.
Yeah, so just the polar opposite of what you and I just said about making it simple. What those guys, again, you have to.
But their stress is complex, so they had to overvalue the recovery.
Well, I just say at the end of the day, their paycheck depends on it, right? I mean, they're getting paid millions and millions of dollars to perform at their best. John is getting paid to make sure they're performing at their best. And I watched John, talking about the circadian rhythm, where he was looking at the sleep cycles and was basically on Wednesday trying to communicate to these guys that, all right, in order for you to be peaking at 1 o'clock on Sunday,
this is where we got to start. This is what we got to do.
And here's what you got to do between now and then. And then you throw on top of that travel going from the East Coast to the West Coast. I mean, one thing with me, even though I can sleep pretty well on a plane, going from Japan, China to Virginia, and then 2 weeks later, literally going back, or a month later going back, all out of whack, just insanely out of whack. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I basically had a little bit of a flu because my brain was all over the place in that. So again, there is a lot that you can dive into the details. And if you're working with athletes, the one thing that, again, I worked with high school athletics, Gray, for 10 years, that. And I would just try to tell these athletes, hey, if you get a good night's sleep, it's going to help your performance. No, reaction time. Try, again, whatever trigger you can try to give a person to realize that they need to be doing this is important.
Well, the other thing is both athletics, maybe military, tactical, we're going to control your stress. And we don't expect you to stress yourself at home any more than we're going to stress you here because your job is hard, right? You're a soldier, you're a firefighter, EMT, you're a pro athlete. So we're going to dose and control your stress so you peak, but you're responsible for your recovery. And everywhere where we own you, I hate to say it, but if you're in the military, if you're in pro athletics, we own you. And so if you got a bad lifestyle, we own that too. So if you start looking at the proactive information that's been part of athletics for the last 20 years or part of the military for the last 10 years, we own you. And your bad lifestyle shows on our stat sheet. And so what we get back to, and here's where I think we can all, what's your state of readiness, okay? Heart rate variability has no placebo effect. It's a great demonstration of your state of readiness. But if you're metabolically ready and you're not musculoskeletally ready, then you can't express the great cardio potential you have. So if you got bad knees and a great heart, you might can tread water forever, but you ain't walking anywhere no matter how fit you are. So your current state of readiness is really what are your health vital signs, and let's add some qualitative things on that.
Well, that's one reason, Gray, we're so adamant and have been since day one that if you're in pain, nothing else matters.
It doesn't. You have
because that's going to impact everything else.
Right. And I hate to say this, but we've got more pain showing up on the internet today or at a gym today than we do at a forward-thinking chiropractor or physical therapist or physician's office, and asking these legitimate questions about, I want to become more active and I want to do it in a safe and effective way. There's a lot of people can't answer that question. Because if your healthcare practitioner doesn't even embrace that in their personal life, I think what they're telling you is what they read, not what they did. Mm-hmm. So.
Right, and I think with even probably looking at stats, and I'm sure we can probably pull some of these stats of how many people, I don't even know. I right now, thinking just off the top of my head, I don't know if I've seen any data or stats of how many people are walking around in pain.
No, I remember you in the early days of you taking the movement screen message back to the athletic training, back to your tribe. And everybody was peppering you with questions about our break points. Now, we'd already been to MCV.
Yeah, all the injury risk and 14 and all this other mess.
We put a bunch of athletes and students on force plates. And all I wanted the biomechanist to say is the break points between 3, 2, and 1 were observable on both a force plate and a camera, meaning we can see the break points you're going for even though you don't have a camera system. Listen, we built the movement screen to be fast, furious, and easily adjustable. It's not a complex machine, and we can make adjustments on the fly. Everybody was more concerned about debating the scoring system than the fact that kids that just passed their frickin' physical under a physician's oversight had pain on one of the movement patterns in the movement screen, and Kelly Starrett summed it up better than anything else. We set the bar frickin' low with the movement screen, all right? Bruce Lee would not have been impressed by that movement screen. No athlete in 1910 that made it to the Olympics would have been impressed by that movement screen. No martial arts instructor, no yoga instructor, nobody who had a remotely physical life would be intimidated by that movement screen if they were baling hay. Okay. And yet it comes around and a lot of people go, well, my client can't do that and I don't want to expose them to something they can't do. And I'm like, well, that's called a challenge. That's called a goal. And that's
But yeah, you're getting ready to go stick them on the treadmill and you're getting ready to go stick them under the weight bar or do all these other crazy things you see on the internet. And I think, the point with the pain aspect is, well, if you're in pain, what's that going to do to your sleep?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing. And then now we know sleep has all these other side effects or poor side effects. So that's where this vicious cycle comes in. And then what is the remedy? Well, exercise. Well, hell, exercise causes more pain.
If you're in pain, how many of the things that you can currently legally do hurt your sleep? Do opioids hurt your sleep? Yeah. Does alcohol hurt your sleep? Yeah.
That's right.
And so a lot of things that are medically endorsed or socially acceptable will hammer your sleep. Yep. But yet, if you try to get your sleep back in a non-synthetic way, meaning with whole foods instead of supplements, right? You're going to have a reawakening. You're going to find energy that is only a little bit like caffeine. It's going to be a lot more satisfying.
I would argue, Gray, if someone comes in to see you or someone comes into the gym, well, we already know the stats. Good chance they're already hurt because they've already got some ailment, whether they know it or not. You go through it, and we know. So once they come in and say, and the data will tell us, if you're in pain, your sleep's altered.
Exactly.
You're not getting good sleep.
And so's your movement.
So
all we got to do is track both of those, but
track it. You just said it. Set the baseline.
Exactly.
Even though you know it's going to be poor, you still want to set the baseline. So when you do have improvements in their pain, when you do maybe see their diet get a little bit better, then that's what they're going to get the buy-in. And then most people don't realize that. Most people realize, well, yeah, I did sleep better last night. Yeah, no shit, because you're not drinking before. You set the temperature down a little bit lower, and you know what? You're a little bit more hydrated.
Yeah. And Ashley, this is the one thing I got from a lot of coaches, and I know you can empathize with this. When Lee and I first came out with the movement screen, people were like, well, what should it be? What's it supposed to look like? What's good? What's bad? And I'm like, baseline. And then the next thing, if you're a coach, you're a teacher, what's the rate of change? Because everybody's getting a baseline today, but you control your rate of change, right? And so there's some people that are going to change really quick. Some people are going to change slow and steady. Some people aren't going to change, and some people are going to tank. And based on that rate of change, you just separated your group. So with a screen, we try to do that before. But what I'm saying is people can't be just satisfied setting a baseline, because the one thing I can tell you about human beings is they're going to change, just like the friggin' weather. So set a baseline and tell me what direction they're going.
All right, to that point, I'm going to interrupt you, Greg, because to get it back to the sleep thing, because I'm not sure where you were going with that, but anyway, doesn't matter. Mike Contreras, Mike Contreras, who worked with a large population of let's just call them utility workers. And, he came back and said his average score in that group, and these are just general guys, was a 9. Mm-hmm. Now, everybody, if you know the movement screen, you say, 9's horrible. 9's the baseline. The goal now is to say, okay, I got a bunch of 9s because we got a bunch of pain. One, a bunch of pain tells me a lot of these guys probably weren't sleeping very well. Okay, so that's, again, another opportunity for education. But Gray, to your point, I don't care what the baseline is. It's the baseline.
Right.
And the baseline, and the goal now is to go from a 9, and this is what he showed. You go from a 9 today, a year later, these guys were at 12. 12's still not great from what you and I would see going from testing a group of different population groups. But at the end of the day, going from 9 to 12 is a major jump.
And the natural experiment that occurred here on top of all the stats is he knew he was going to find that because workman's comp had been steadily going up. And all of a sudden, he found a number that was pretty low. And then all of a sudden, when that number went up, workman's comp expenditures went down.
And pain decreased significantly. Pain went down, and those guys, pain went down 20%.
And he didn't, here's the one, please hear this, every healthcare professional out there, he didn't mitigate the pain of this population by chasing it. He mitigated the pain of the population by finding out all of the movement and lifestyle mistakes that the painful people were making and trying to basically slowly onboard better behaviors. So if you go right at pain, it will hide from you behind opioids, ibuprofen, knee straps, magnets, Tempur-Pedic mattresses. But if you go look at the pain for what it is and then look at all the other things that can be fixed without worrying about the pain, that pain's just going to be discomfort, and then all of a sudden it's going to be nothing. So
that'll do it for this episode of the Movement Podcast. Thanks for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please take a minute to subscribe and review. If you want to learn more about our system and take the next step in your movement journey, visit us at movementpod.com. Until next time, be sure to first move well, then move often.